All right, my name is Dan Magaha. My talk tonight is going to focus on an area that I am often found proselytizing during beer night, which is control, more specifically getting game developers to take control over their careers. So let's go ahead and get started. And that's not the right way, shall we? There we go. Okay, so a little bit about me. I've been working in games for 13 years. I have managed to hold on to my marriage for that time and have 2 young children. I've been a producer or studio director on a bunch of different things. A lot of my work's been in PCs, consoles, but we've dabbled in a variety of other things. I started off in Baltimore, Maryland, working for Firaxis Games, moved to Austin in 2007 to join NCSoft, which at the time seemed like a can't-miss opportunity. Hindsight. Most recently, I was in charge of a small studio here in town called Seamless Entertainment, and we built a game called Soul Exodus, which was a Unreal-powered space shooter that we launched on Steam in January of this year. All right, so let's get a quick overview of the health of our industry, shall we? Let's see. We've had massive layoffs. Okay. Austin, by some accounts, and I don't have objective fact-checked numbers here, but by some accounts, over half of the total positions that have been eliminated this year have happened in Austin, which boggles my mind if that's true. We've seen long-running studios been, around the world. I think, earlier this month, Sony shuttered Psygnosis, which was the longest-running continuously operational game development studio in the world. We've seen giant publishers faltering. Activision's up for sale. EA's stock price is bad. THQ is on suicide watch. It's bad, right? Sales are atrocious. They're on par to be the worst since 2006. But those are classic signs of market disruption, right? So that means that there's got to be somebody who's making a ton of money and everything's going to be cool if we just figure out what the hip new business model is. However, unfortunately, as Sherry pointed out earlier, we were counting on Zynga to pull us out of this, and isn't that really maybe not the right? People hate Farmville. And there's mobile, which is great, but obviously, probably everybody in this room knows somebody that, went to stake their fortune in mobile and came back with, nothing but empty wallet, and they were looking for whatever they can find. So it's tough. It's tough out there. Good news is there's been a bunch of local successes, and this certainly is not an exhaustive list. Just a couple that came to my mind right off the top of my head. Most of these companies that have been successful here locally are small groups that have been very effective at finding a niche and making money there. So there is hope. What's going on in the rest of the job market? Well, not a lot of great stuff. Basically, you got people talking about McJobs. Everyone's going to have a McJob in the next decade because all the jobs that are coming back are low wages, and everybody's, the employers are now looking for part-timers and contractors because, hey, their profits are sky high because they're hiring fewer people, asking them to do more, and people don't want to lose their jobs. So when their bosses ask them to do more, they say, "Thank you, sir. May I have another? I'd be happy to do twice the work for, half the pay." This is bad, and obviously in gaming, which is an even more specialized business, it's probably worse. But there is some good news. First of all, you're at their mercy. That's not the good news. But the good news is, and my fonts are not coming up here. That's terrible. The good news is you're all going to die. Except for Ray Kurzweil, you're probably going to be working for him when he's in a robot body in 2025. Wait a minute, why is this good news? Well, the reason it's good news is because knowing that you have a finite amount of time on this earth forces you to focus on what's really important to you. No slide deck is complete without a trite Steve Jobs quote, so I have graciously complied. This actually is one of my favorite Jobs quotes. It has a little bit of personal significance to me. I lost my father about 2 years ago to cancer at the age of 60. It really changed my mindset about time and what you do with it. I started thinking about all those things that I said, oh, well, one day I'm going to do this and one day I'm going to do that. And all those things tend to feel that they're certainties. You're going to have time to do these things when you're older. You're going to work a long time and then you're going to retire and go do, all these things you want to do. That's not a certainty. The other thing that got me thinking about was fear. The second part of this quote is very much about fear. It talks about the things that are the enemy to your own success, which is being afraid to take chances, being afraid to do things. You're afraid that, if you try something and fail, you might look stupid, you might lose some money, you might waste your time, which is the stupidest rationale of all, because, if you're not trying something new and different and testing yourself, then you are wasting your time. And what he's saying here is when you're dead, that stuff doesn't matter. The scorecard's over. It doesn't matter anymore. So why are you trying to look cool and, not risk anything when you're going to be dead and it's not going to matter? So take your chances now while you have the opportunity. So failure. I love failure. Failure's great. In this country especially, we have this weird thing where we are totally, there's a stigma on failure. We have this mentality that anyone who has ever succeeded at something did so because they worked harder than everybody else, which must mean that if you failed, you weren't working very hard, you're lazy. So therefore, if you follow that to its logical conclusion, the only logical path to do is to not fail. You must succeed, and if you do fail, you surely can't tell anybody. Don't ask for advice. Don't ever look like you don't know what you're doing, because you must succeed. That's absolutely ridiculous, and there's proof everywhere around us that that's not the case. I think you should embrace failure, and here's a couple of reasons why. First of all, you learn a lot more from failing than you from succeeding. If you succeed on your first try doing something, first of all, you're probably extremely rare. But if you do, you probably didn't learn a whole lot about why you were successful. If you fail, you're forced to spend some time actually investigating why you failed, which in turn helps you be a lot more consistent in repeating your future successes. So we don't want people to be afraid to fail. We do however, want people to fail quickly. This is kind of a big buzzword mantra in the agile development community: fail fast. And all this really means is, if you're going to fail, don't do it after you've spent 5 years and $20 million. Do it when you've spent a couple of weeks and some weekend time with your friends to realize that nobody wants to play your game. Don't do it after you've spent your entire life working on it. And then, Angry Birds and WD-40. A lot of people know this statistic, but Angry Birds was not the first game that Rovio made. It was the 52nd game that Rovio made. Nobody's probably heard of the majority of the ones they made before Angry Birds. And, your mother and your kids and your babysitter all know Angry Birds because they made 51 other games and learned from them, and then, they finally hit the right combination. WD-40, there's a reason that the can that everybody has in their garage is not called WD-1. Okay, it took 40 tries for them to get it right. And then finally, there's a quote that I love. I can't talk too much about it, but there's a great blog post on his blog. Mark Cuban has this quote: "You only have to be right once." And the idea here is that you have this mentality. You want to think that if people are really successful and they're right, they must be right about everything. And here's a guy who owns the Dallas Mavericks. He's a billionaire, and he's like, yeah, I was right one time, and I made a bunch of money, and I can do whatever I want. Isn't that awesome? So I think that's great that he's willing to come out and say he doesn't have all the answers. He was just right one time, and it happened to be $1 billion worth of right. Or several billion, actually. Okay, so before you can start taking risks, you need to know what you really want. John, I can't tell you how terrible this looks without my fonts. I'm so disappointed. So this is different for everybody. It's a personal question. But ask yourself your question. What do you really want? Do you want to make great games? Most of us would say yes. Do you want to make a lot of money? Do you want stability? Do you want creative control? Do you want to make the world a better place? Do you want to crunch on mediocre crap? Well, Nobody says that, yes, I want to crunch on mediocre crap, but guess how many people actually end up crunching on mediocre crap? Quite a few. And how does that happen? Well, like the classic Rush song, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. If you don't decide what's important to you and make sure that that factors into your decision making, somebody else will decide what's important to them, which is to get rich while you crunch on mediocre crap. So don't do that. All right. So how do you actually go forward once you know what you want to do? You need to get yourself in alignment. What I mean by that is assess your goals. You've prioritized what's important. You align those goals to your assets and your skills. It can be how well you program, your ability to make art. I appreciate it, dude. I'm going to go over by like 2 minutes. Sorry. It can be, how great you are as a designer. It's also things like your decision-making skills, how good of a manager you are, how well you listen, your network of contacts and colleagues that are able to help you when you need answers and don't know where to turn. Those are all things that are assets to you. Look at what assets you have and what you're deficient in. If there are things that you aren't good enough in, you don't have experience in certain areas, you need to develop a plan for how you're going to get those things to a point that allow you to do what you want to do. And if you can't get where you want to go with the skills and assets you have, it's okay to take a crummy job. All of us have done it. The trick is, don't stay there forever and delude yourself that it's some awesome place or that it's okay or whatever, because, at one time you actually had a plan and a dream of what you wanted to do. And if you have the skills, what in the world is possibly stopping you? Change, fear of change. Change, the way I'm going to summarize this slide is you can either initiate change or you can deal with it, but you can't avoid it. So why let somebody else dictate how your life is going to change when you have the opportunity to decide when your life is going to change? Change is hard, yes, but you have a lot more control than you think. Right now, every single one of you has control over how you work. If you don't want to crunch, you have the opportunity to politely and firmly decline to crunch. If you're saying, yes, I will crunch, you are making that decision. You have the opportunity to decide where you work, what company you work for. You even have the opportunity to say, I don't really want to work in this business right now with the climate that it's at. If you're punching a clock or working just to get a paycheck in the games business just because it's games and you feel like you should be making games because you always did, you're in the wrong business. You can make a lot more money somewhere else. Games are not sacred. And the only thing I mean by this is that, I love making games and I'd love to stay in this business the rest of my life. But if I can't do that and still maintain the family life that I want and the, job-home balance that I want, I won't do it. And I don't think you guys should either. So here's the obligatory cliche diagram, because I wanted to get a unicorn and a rainbow into the slide. But it's also probably, one of the truest ones that I've seen on Facebook lately. And this has been absolutely true for me since the day I got in my truck and drove, from Baltimore to Austin, which is nothing of consequence ever happens when you stay in your comfort zone. So I hope that you will all take the opportunity to effect a little bit of change, test the validity of this awesome unicorn image and see if the magic does in fact happen outside your comfort zone, and go out and make something awesome. Thanks.